Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today we are opening up a pretty massive stack of research focused entirely on you, the listener, and anyone who really wants to understand the daily physical and mental reality of the Havanese breed.
Right, and I'm so glad to be here to dig into this with you because our mission for this deep dive is to basically completely dismantle a pretty pervasive and subtly dangerous myth about small dogs.
Yeah, exactly. We really want to uncover what it actually takes to give a clever, compact companion a truly fulfilling life.
And the quintessential image most people have when they bring this specific breed into their home is like the decorative lap dog.
Oh, for sure. Curled up on a blanket.
Right. They picture this brilliant little creature curled up perfectly in the living room, manipulating family members for snacks with just a tilt of the head.
Oh, and it's a very cute image.
It is, but it's an image born out of affection that sets up a fundamentally flawed expectation regarding what this animal actually requires to function.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the source material paints a really stark contrast between that curled-up lapdog and what happens, like, the very second the leash comes out.
Oh, the transformation is instantaneous.
Yeah. The dog is suddenly spinning, trotting to the entryway, pausing at the door as the sights and smells of the outside world open up. You can practically see their nervous system light up.
And this is where the dangerous assumption happens. People look at that adorable dog in their lap and think, well, because the dog is tiny, just following a human around the house from the kitchen to the couch is an adequate baseline of fitness.
Which, as the research shows, following someone to the fridge is definitely not fitness.
Not even close. And that cuts right to the core thesis of our analysis today. For Havanese, movement is not about burning calories or, checking some arbitrary exercise box.
Right.
When this breed moves through the world, it is actively building spatial confidence. It's finding necessary mental engagement, maintaining critical joint health, and just achieving emotional balance.
So we basically have to completely divorce the concept of movement from our human idea of getting a cardiovascular workout.
Exactly. We have to redefine what exercise actually looks like for this specific breed.
Because we're aiming for a full dog life, not an athletic life. I mean, the research is definitive here. Havanese are not a high-drive working breed.
No, nobody is drafting them into sled teams.
Right, or training them for endurance sports.
Yeah.
But taking a Havanese for a walk shouldn't look like forcing a friend onto a gym treadmill until they sweat either. It's much more like taking a highly curious friend to an interactive museum.
That is a perfect analogy.
You want them to linger at the exhibits, right? Process the space, engage with the environment.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying biological mechanism of that engagement, particularly regarding their sense of smell.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, when you're on a walk and your dog stops to investigate a single patch of grass for, like, 3 minutes, that isn't wasted time. It is rigorous cognitive processing.
So they're not just dawdling.
Not at all. The canine olfactory system is an absolute marvel of fluid dynamics. When they sniff, the air is literally routed into a dedicated pathway in their nasal cavity, completely separate from the air they used to just breathe.
Oh, wow. I had no idea they separated the air like that.
Yeah, and they have hundreds of millions of olfactory receptors. A massive portion of their brain is strictly dedicated to analyzing those chemical signals.
So when they're frozen at a tree, sniffing intensely, their brain is basically running a supercomputer simulation of, like, every other animal that has passed by that spot in the last 48 hours.
Precisely. Processing that dense web of chemical data burns a massive amount of mental energy. So for a clever breed like this, utilizing that olfactory system keeps their mind genuinely satisfied.
Meaning a full dog life ensures their brain is working just as hard as their legs.
Exactly. If you just march them down the street at a brisk human pace and yank them away from every smell, you are essentially dragging them through the museum blindfolded.
Man, that's such a good way to put it. Now, if we take that a step further and apply it to where these dogs actually live, we hit a really interesting environmental challenge in the sources.
The apartment living aspect.
Right. The Havanese is famously a great apartment dog, but living in a smaller footprint, like a high-rise, means the baseline metabolic burn is just much lower, simply because they have less square footage to patrol.
Yeah, the physical confinement of apartment living makes accidental understimulation a really chronic issue.
So how do you fix that in a small space?
Well, a small home must provide a complete behavioral ecosystem, not just a scaled-down version of one. Because the space is limited, Owners have to artificially inject mental stimulation into the environment.
And the sources actually outline a whole curriculum for this indoor enrichment.
They do.
We're looking at trick training, highly structured scent games where they have to find hidden items, complex food puzzles that force them to manipulate objects to get their meals.
Even turning grooming into a cooperative, brain-engaging game counts.
Yeah.
All of this is legitimate exercise.
Wait, grooming counts as exercise?
It is mandatory exercise in a way. A physically tired dog with zero mental engagement is just a ticking clock for behavioral issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, if you walk them for an hour, but their mind remains unchallenged, they will often become demanding, relentlessly barky, and entirely unable to settle down.
So physical fatigue simply does not override cognitive boredom.
Not for a smart breed, no.
But the sources also stress that even with the best indoor puzzles, outdoor walks still matter immensely in an apartment setting. Exposure to hallways, elevators, the general hum of building life, that's all crucial socialization.
It really is.
I want to look closely at navigating an apartment building, though. Because say I'm looking at a chaotic lobby filled with rushing commuters, automatic doors sliding open, delivery carts everywhere. My immediate human instinct is to simply scoop up a 10-pound dog and carry them through that chaos.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's safer, it's faster, and they just fit perfectly in my arms.
That instinct is incredibly common, and I totally get it. But it actively works against the dog's psychological development.
Really? How so?
A small companion deserves the agency to walk through the world on its own 4 feet. When you constantly scoop them up and carry them through every chaotic or novel environment, you completely strip away their opportunity to build independence.
So you're basically removing their ability to spatially map the environment for themselves.
Exactly. You're inducing a state of learned helplessness. The world is just sort of happening to them from chest height.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
They can't choose to approach something curious, and they can't choose to retreat from something scary. They lose out on the physical grounding and social confidence that comes from experiencing their environment directly.
And I imagine a dog who is confident navigating their own physical space is far less likely to suffer from anxiety-induced barking.
Yes, or reactivity when they hear a noise down the apartment hall. They desperately need that agency to feel secure.
Well, that need for agency brings us to a pretty massive physical roadblock. A dog cannot comfortably navigate its environment, let alone build confidence, if its own physical machinery is overloaded.
The weight issue.
Right, which brings us to the outsized impact of weight on a compact frame. As Havanese owners already know, that signature double coat is an absolute master of illusion.
Oh, it hides everything.
Yeah, you cannot trust your eyes to judge their body condition.
Yeah.
That fluff will easily hide 2 or 3 extra pounds. You have to actively trust your hands on their ribs.
Because the coat hides the weight, and our human perception of food portions just exacerbates the problem.
Right.
A Havanese can gain weight from genuinely microscopic extras. A single piece of cheese dropped on the kitchen floor might seem negligible to a human, but calorically, for a dog of this size, it is a massive metabolic event.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we actually do the math on the proportions here, the numbers are wild.
You really are.
If a human puts on 2 pounds, they barely notice. But adding 2 extra pounds to a 12-pound Havanese is an increase of nearly 17% of their total body weight.
Which is staggering.
That is the proportional equivalent of a 150-pound human suddenly gaining 25 pounds overnight. It is exactly like strapping a heavy 30-pound hiking backpack onto a toddler and asking them to go about their day, climb the stairs, and run around the yard.
Just think about the biomechanical toll of carrying that invisible backpack every single minute of the day.
It must be exhausting.
It severely degrades their knees, compresses their spinal joints, destroys their overall stamina, and severely compromises their breathing comfort.
So weight management for this breed is definitely not a cosmetic issue.
No, it is strictly a structural and comfort issue. A dog at a lean, healthy weight simply moves through the world with less friction.
But the notes are super emphatic that if an owner realizes their dog is carrying that metaphorical 30-pound backpack, the fix is absolutely not a sudden crash diet.
Definitely not.
And it is definitely not forcing them into hard, exhausting exercise to sweat it off.
No, forcing an overweight small dog into high-impact exercise is just a recipe for a cruciate ligament tear.
Yikes. So what's the right approach?
The reduction plan must be gradual and built alongside a veterinarian. It requires almost militaristic precision. accurately measuring food with a scale, accounting for literally every scrap.
Meaning ensuring the entire household is strictly adhering to the protocol so no one is secretly slipping them treats.
Exactly. And then you steadily increase low impact, slow movement.
You mentioned breathing comfort earlier, and the sources actually connect that extra weight directly to acute weather risks, specifically heat stroke,
Yes.
because there's this assumption that, well, a dog bred in Cuba is naturally immune to summer weather. But the combination of environmental factors here is highly dangerous.
The physics of a dog's cooling system explains why. Dogs cool themselves primarily through panting, right? Evaporating moisture off their respiratory tract.
Okay, right.
So when a dog is carrying excess fat, that fat acts as internal insulation, trapping their core heat.
Oh, I see.
Then you add high humidity, which stops evaporation in its tracks, and hot pavement radiating heat upward into their short legs.
That sounds miserable.
It is. Then compound all of that with a matted coat. A properly brushed, healthy coat actually allows air to circulate against the skin to help regulate temperature, but a matted coat acts like a sealed winter parka.
Wow. So that combination, humidity, fat insulation, and trapped air, causes the core temperature to spike rapidly.
Extremely rapidly.
So owners really have to monitor for heavy panting that refuses to ease up, or excessive drooling, or sudden lethargy.
And immediately shift any outdoor activity to the coolest hours of the early morning or late evening.
Right. But moving away from the thermodynamics, let's look at the mechanical structure itself. That invisible heavy backpack we discussed puts the absolute maximum stress on the dog's weakest structural points.
Your joints.
Yes, their joints. Because their frame is so small, we have to scrutinize how they physically navigate our human-sized homes.
The mechanical stress on their small frames is immense, particularly regarding their knees. Owners must be hypervigilant for really subtle indicators of structural pain.
Because a dog won't always let out a dramatic yelp when they're hurting, right?
Rarely. It often presents as skipping a single step while trotting, or maybe an occasional hop on a back leg, a slight, almost imperceptible limp, or just a sudden reluctance to jump up onto a surface they usually access easily.
Or even generalized stiffness after waking up.
Yes, exactly.
And the major culprit for this degradation seems to be our furniture. The sources point out that repeated jumping down from sofas and human beds is a massive cumulative injury risk.
If you think about the physics of a 10-pound dog leaping 3 feet down onto a hardwood floor, the shockwave traveling up their front legs and through their patella is intense.
But I mean, if I ban the dog from the couch entirely, I'm kind of ruining half the point of having a companion breed.
Right.
So we need a structural fix, not a ban on fun.
Huh.
What does this all actually mean for daily life? Are we supposed to just wrap this dog in bubble wrap?
No, not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept we are really striving for here is safe confidence.
Safe confidence. Okay.
You absolutely want them to enjoy the sofa. Physical closeness is integral to their emotional well-being, but you have to manage the descent.
Going down is the problem.
It is the cumulative microtrauma that causes the damage. One jump might be fine, but thousands of impacts onto a slippery floor over 3 years will just shred that connective tissue.
So we alter the architecture. We lay down high-traction rugs or runners specifically in their landing zones so they don't splay their legs when they hit the ground.
Yes.
And we introduce ramps or low steps near their favorite furniture.
Exactly. You engineer the environment to support their joints. And, the structural awareness has to extend to how they play, too.
Right. The sources say play sessions require strict environmental supervision. Like, children must be taught never to toss them, drop them, or encourage wild, vertical jumping games.
And if there are larger dogs in the household, an accidental, completely friendly hip check from a Labrador can cause genuine orthopedic trauma to a Havanese.
Just because of the size difference.
Right. Good play builds confidence, but you have to watch for over-arousal, frantic hiding, or fatigue. Never assume a dog is fine just because they are still running.
Because highly aroused dogs will consistently push right through physical pain to stay in the game.
Always.
Now, managing that physical environment looks radically different depending on where the dog is in its lifespan. The sources map this out from puppyhood to the senior years, and the mechanical requirements change entirely.
Because the physiological states are completely different. With puppies, you're dealing with a skeleton that simply hasn't finished forming.
The growth plates. The sources emphasize no forced long walks or repetitive high-impact activities for puppies. Can we look at the actual anatomy of that? Like, why is a long walk so dangerous for a 5-month-old dog?
Well, growth plates are areas of soft, developing cartilage tissue at the ends of long bones. They don't calcify and harden into solid bone until the dog is much older.
Okay, so they're vulnerable.
Incredibly vulnerable to repetitive stress. If you force a puppy to march on hard pavement for 2 miles, the repetitive impact can actually deform that soft cartilage,
Oh, wow.
which leads to uneven bone growth and permanent joint issues later in life. Their movement should be self-directed exploration on soft, varied surfaces, not forced marches.
So you let them dictate the pace and stop when they drop.
Exactly.
And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the seniors. Senior Havanese still desperately need the mental enrichment of movement, but the biomechanics change again.
With senior dogs, you are actively combating muscle atrophy and joint inflammation. Their fast-twitch muscle fibers, the ones that help them recover quickly if they slip, they diminish.
Which is why traction becomes even more critical in their later years.
Yes. A simple slip on the kitchen floor that a young dog would bounce back from can cause painful micro-tears in a senior dog's aging muscles.
So their movement needs to be shorter, gentler, but highly frequent to keep the joints lubricated without causing exhaustion.
And crucially, a sudden reluctance to rise or a slowing down on walks should never, ever be dismissed as just getting old.
Right. The sources are clear on that. That is a clinical indicator of manageable pain, and it requires a veterinary intervention.
Exactly.
Now, across all of those life stages, from the soft-bone puppies to the stiff-jointed seniors, there is one biological necessity the sources highlight that is just as vital as any movement.
Resting.
Yes, resting. Small, highly active dogs require an enormous amount of downtime to process their environment.
It might be the most overlooked aspect of canine husbandry.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Without adequate, undisturbed, calm-down time, their cortisol levels remain artificially elevated. Chronic overexcitement leads directly to fractured sleep cycles.
Which leads to an intense increase in reactive barking and highly irritable, nippy behavior. I want to pause on that because there is a massive human fallacy here. When we see a dog zooming around the living room, acting totally wild, bouncing off the walls and getting mouthy, the immediate human instinct is to think, oh, look at all that excess energy. I need to take them for a run to tire them out.
Right, which makes things worse.
Because mathematically, based on what we just discussed about their cognitive load, they might actually be completely overstimulated and desperately need an enforced nap.
It is exactly like a toddler throwing a tantrum at a birthday party because they skipped their nap time.
That makes perfect sense.
This really raises an important question about how we interpret what we are seeing. We have to completely recalibrate our definition of tiredness.
Okay, how so?
Well, a mentally and physically balanced, confident Havanese should be exactly as skilled at settling down calmly as it is at engaging enthusiastically.
So the off switch isn't a factory setting.
No, it is a learned skill and a biological necessity. Both ends of the spectrum, the lively, curious engagement and the deep, peaceful resting, are structurally required to maintain their emotional baseline.
So what does this all mean when we synthesize this entire stack of research? The objective was never to exhaust a cheerful lap dog until it collapses, and was certainly never to treat them like a fragile, decorative ornament carried around in a purse.
Right. The goal is to keep their physical frame completely unburdened and their clever, processing mind genuinely satisfied.
Movement for a Havanese, when executed correctly, is this harmonious, carefully engineered blend of spatial confidence, intellectual curiosity, and deep connection with their environment.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Before we wrap up, I want you, the listener, to hold on to one final provocative thought. We spent a lot of time today talking about modifying the architecture of our homes, right? Putting down traction runners, installing low-grade ramps, meticulously managing how they access the furniture.
All really important stuff.
But imagine, for a second, viewing your own living room, your kitchen, your entire daily reality from a height of exactly 11 inches.
That really changes your perspective.
It does. Look up at the towering furniture, the vast expanses of slick, frictionless flooring, the massive doors. How much of what we casually label as bad behavior or stubbornness or fearfulness in small breed dogs is actually just a highly intelligent animal rationally responding to a world that was architecturally designed entirely against their physical dimensions?
It forces a complete perspective shift. Empathy for the animal really begins the moment you understand the physics of their world from their exact eye level.
Absolutely. Well, as always, a quick reminder that this deep dive is for educational purposes only. If you are ever concerned about your dog's physical movement, weight, or joint health, you must consult your veterinarian.
especially since the natural next step in understanding this breed's mechanics involves recognizing specific warning signs for health conditions, like periodontal disease and luxating patellas.
Right, which you will definitely want to track as they age. Thank you for joining us today as we explored the physical and mental reality of the Havanese. Keep observing, keep rethinking your space, and we'll catch you next time.